Hi, my name is Oscar Magallanes. I'm an artist from Los Angeles and also work with the collective 3B. When did I begin making art? I don't think I ever stopped making art. I'm pretty sure that ever since, well, like most people, we start to make marks. It's one of the first things we do as children or even as toddlers, maybe even before we start speaking. So I think it's just something that I've always done, never gave up, and since I was young, I kind of really thought that I wanted to make a career of it, just be an artist, and just pretty much never stopped and never gave up on that goal. So my experience as a art student, so my life was a very untraditional path. Pretty much when I was young, and I speak about this often only because of the stigma around, people who tend to get in trouble when they're teenagers or whatever it is. But I got kicked out of high school when I was 15. I just wasn't doing well in school, but it turns out that I had an undiagnosed learning disability. And so what happened was, long story short, I was able to get back into school, finish. But what happened when I had been expelled is that I got to meet this very generous person who got me back into school, and their name is Nancy Moore, who was the assistant superintendent of the district in high school. And so what happened there is that they introduced me to an art teacher who then told me about the Rhyme and Arts program. And that's a program based out of Cal State Fullerton and also in Otis. But I went through that program when I was very young, when I was 15, and ended up kind of having a relationship with that program for a very long time. I ended up getting on their board of directors for a while when I was in my 20s. But I met a lot of people, and it was the first time that somebody told me, they gave us supplies, and first time I really had kind of professional supplies. But it's the first time I met people who were professional artists, people like Ken Twitchell and so many great artists. And Barbara Thompson was a great kind of influence on me, my first art teacher. And I continued making art. I did that, but I wasn't able to go to school because of that learning disability. So even though I was at a community college, I couldn't do that one math class. So what happened was I did all my art classes, did everything I could, and a few other things. Ended up doing graphic design, but I had pretty much given up on higher education until I met my partner back in, 2012 maybe. They encouraged me to go back to school. There was things that I wanted to do in my career that would have pretty much taken me getting my MFA. So she helped me kind of matriculate. It was very difficult. I was much older at that point, but I was able to go to East LA College. Then just did my math and English, which once I was diagnosed, I was able to get services for that. So I was able to do that and then transfer into UCLA within less than a year. So I did my undergrad at UCLA, and then a year after that I went to UCSD and did my MFA there, finished up there in 2021, which was really great. I worked with Ruben Ortiz Torres, which is now part of the collective. But the collective actually started in undergrad at UCLA, so a lot of the people were there. Well, not a lot of the people, but there was very few kind of Chicanos, Latinos, indigenous people there. So 5 of us got together and created an art collective, started doing public art. And so we started working with people like Hamza Walker doing their installations at the LAX, which is now known as the Brick, and painted the exterior of every kind of, did pieces for Barbara Kruger, Barbara Salomon, so many different people, and then ended up doing our own piece, our first piece in Oaxaca. One of the collective members, his family's from Oaxaca, and he's Zapoteco, so we were able to go out there and work at the Children's Museum and do a mural as our first collective piece. And at this point, we've just kept going and been doing a lot of public artwork and making sure that we stay connected to different institutions and galleries. So this is part of that, having that connection, kind of that cultural lineage with this show, with works that are produced with different artisans in collaboration from Oaxaca to Baja to different parts of Guadalajara, so different parts of where our families are from. The question is if my art was based off of Latino styles. I don't think I've ever considered myself Hispanic or Latino. I grew up very much in Chicano culture. So between Mexican and Chicano. So there was very much this understanding of the aesthetics that came with it. So the lowriding, I had uncles and cousins, and from the tattoo culture to really like, you know, the El Caminos, the lowriders, all of that was very much part of where I grew up. There was a lot of already kind of first generation people who, I mean, the city had its own car club. I grew up in San Gabriel Valley, and it was basically all Chicanos in my neighborhood. So there was always this outlook that had to do with not only the aesthetics but the political stance that comes with being a Chicano, which very much is trying to decenter the Eurocentric kind of view and the labels that come with that. Really much acknowledging a lot of things that come from our lineage that has to do with our kind of native indigenous cultures as well. The ideas behind Chicano culture, that's really interesting. I want to say, okay, so that's probably one of the more difficult questions because there isn't an agreement so much on Chicano culture, but it's really interesting in having such a divided political landscape that we're in right now, where we could have Chicanos that are kind of on the, people who say they're Chicano that are on a very different political spectrum than I am, or at least what would traditionally be thought of as Chicano. So there is this interesting kind of discussion. Also, a lot of things have to do with just the language around it. But for me, there's very much this progressive stance that comes with being Chicano, and I don't think that it's for anyone to define, other than something that is acknowledged in a history that very much has to do with this heavy-handed criminalization. Things that have to do with the racial history, with marginalized kind of communities, and so there's this larger conversation that goes all the way, you know, up and down, you know, Latin America. But what is it what is this identity with war and colonization and all these things? So it's really much, for me, it's an acknowledgement of that and trying to undo some of that, and also respecting what has been lost. So it isn't so much. I mean, the police in my community started arresting me when I was 12, I think. So and I would hear them. They would say like, "Oh, get them while they're young. Get them for anything, so then it won't be their first offense, right?" So that kind of thing that was going on. So I always had this adversarial kind of stance against kind of a lot of this systemic racism. So to me, the work is acknowledging both how these very beautiful kind of like lowriders, like this is my truck right here. I actually have a 1951 Chevy pickup, which was given to me by my parents. It was the first car that they purchased when they were married back in the 60s. And I was able to restore it pretty recently. But to me, this was something that was very, very beautiful of the community, right? Having a lowrider and turning something that was very much this mid-century Americana into your own thing, right? And claiming it as something that we could be proud of. But that was also very much used to criminalize the community at the same time. So this idea of like, if you drive a Regal or whatever it is, there's certain things that were very much targeted by police. So, or even Pachuco culture, right? We could look back at the Zutsu riots and things of that sort, where it's something that was a point of pride, and very much people became a target because of it. So somewhere between that is the work that I create, acknowledging both sides as far as how something can be used to criminalize us, even though it's something that's very much like a high point in Chicano culture. But I don't know if that's redefining it. I think it's trying to look back at history where we could collapse different, not to look at things not in a linear way, but really think about cycles and how things reoccur and how things kind of come to light, and amongst things that are oftentimes pretty much, again, just erased, again, because of this very not kind history. this very much, these histories of colonialism and conquest in the Mexican-American War and all these different things have to do with, native cultures of this land. So to me, it's really just making sure that those things are highlighted and things, and everybody can get something out of it. At least, I mean, I'm talking pretty generally, but the collective kind of has a way of doing individual works, but when we come together, we want to make sure that we do work that's accessible to the community and that's very much based based around the community. So when we're doing a mural, we make sure we get community input, and it's also that's us pushing back against the ratio of so many murals in our communities. So I mean, we kind of run the full gamut from institutions all the way down to Whittier Boulevard and doing murals for the Chicano moratorium. But everything we do, we make sure that it's from a certain worldview.